I eyed the passed-out man on the ground, but he didn't stir. A couple of minutes later, Maddox returned with a towel. He held it out to me through the bars. I hopped off the hut, making sure not to land in the pee, and grabbed the towel. It was cold and wet. I smelled it. Not trusting anyone around here, but I only caught the barest hint of detergent. "It's water and soap, or did you expect me to give you a towel with more piss?" Maddox said. He actually sounded offended. What right did he have to be offended? Was he the one in the kennel? I wiped my hands, muttering, "How should I know? That guy wanted to pee on me, and you probably think that's what I deserve for being my father's daughter." Dad evoked hatred in many people. And by merely sharing his blood, I reaped the same emotions. Dad's power had protected me from the force of people's viciousness, their fear always greater than their dislike. Now I was left unprotected. "No, just because you're a captive doesn't mean you should be treated like dirt. I want your father, not you." I kept rubbing my hand with the towel, but the stink of pee from the kennel floor clogged my nose, so I still felt dirty. "So a dog cage is your version of not treating me like dirt?" "That was a club decision." I tilted my head curiously. "And where would you have kept me?" "We have a basement." "Sounds splendid." I held out the towel. He shook his head, watching me in a way that felt too personal. "Keep it." I nodded, then made a beeline around the pea puddle, and climbed back on the hut. "I'll have someone clean this up in the morning, or maybe afternoon, depending on when everyone's sober." He had the barest accent, one that didn't belong here and one I couldn't place but was definitely Southern. "You realize my father would have it easy if he attacked you now?" "He would, but your old man doesn't have the slightest clue where you are. We only recently moved into this clubhouse." "Where are we?" I asked casually. Maddox watched me closely, and slowly a smile formed on his lips, dimpling his right cheek. "For some reason, I think it might be a mistake to tell you too much."
"Maddox!"
A high-pitched female voice called out. Maddox sighed, looking up to a window where a naked woman waved. "Your girlfriend is waiting for you to keep her entertained," I muttered. "Not my girlfriend, but I should go," he said. He grabbed the guy on the ground and dragged him away. Once he was out of sight and earshot, I released a shuddering breath. Tears pressed against my eyeballs. I wasn't strong enough to hold them back. Sitting in the dark, listening to the grunts and howls and barks of the dogs around me, silent tears trailed down my cheeks. It wasn't cold, but I couldn't stop shaking. I'd always known Dad's business was dangerous, but it had only been a distant danger despite the bodyguards following my every steps. They were dead now. Either the bikers had killed them, or Dad had done so the moment he found out they'd allowed me to be kidnapped. I didn't blame them. Giovanni had annoyed me so much until I'd ordered them away to have a private conversation with him and get him off my back. Dad wouldn't see it that way. He'd blame my bodyguards in his rage, and I wasn't there to tell him otherwise and take the blame. I wiped the tears away eventually and stared off into the darkness blankly, listening to the occasional yowling of the bikers as they got more drunk. The huge dog in the left kennel began pacing, ears perking. It scratched at the ground, then curled up. Despite my fear of the dogs, I felt sorry for them for spending their life locked in a small cage. How long would I spend here? Maybe Dad and Matteo were already on their way to save me? I prayed that was the case. I didn't want to find out what those bikers had in mind for me. Maddox might have saved me from being peed on and pretended I was going to be treated decently, but so far, everything pointed in another direction. My beauty had been a weapon all my life. Something to intimidate others without guns and violence. But now it was a liability. I'd been in my early teens when I'd realized the look in many men's eyes. and I'd soon learn to twist it to my advantage. But now, after I'd allowed myself one good cry, I promised myself to be strong in order to get out of this alive. Dad would do everything to save me, but I needed to make sure he and Matteo didn't get themselves killed while they did. I had to figure out a way to make it easier for him, or maybe even escape. These bikers weren't the brightest candles on the cake. I had to find a way to trick them so I could run away. My eyelids soon became heavy, but I forced them open until they burned fiercely. The dog snored in the kennels beside mine, probably dreaming of having me as their next meal. A figure moved out of the house long after the party had settled down. I recognized Maddox as they leaned against the porch, backlit by window lights. He was the tallest of all bikers. Occasionally, the tip of his cigarette glowed up. Even without seeing his eyes, I could tell he was watching me. It was a tingling sensation, one I'd felt in the club where I'd first seen him. Maddox White. I knew who he was. Dad never shared the darker parts of his life with me or Mom, as if we couldn't handle them because we were female. Mom didn't want to know, and I had never really made an effort to find out more because it seemed futile. It would have only piqued my interest further and made me resent the fact I could never be a part of the business even more. Yet, I'd heard the story of the bikers in New Jersey that my father had eradicated single-handedly. I made sure to keep my eyes and ears open at all times, and this massacre was still a popular topic among made men on social events. Since most men tried to be exceedingly entertaining around me to impress me, stories like that always reached my ears. I took a deep breath and pressed against the rough wall. My fingers hurt from clutching my high heel. Maddox was the son of one of the bikers who'd been killed. He must really hate Dad. So I trusted his friendliness even less. So far, I hadn't tried to think about the revenge plan. It would have only made me more nervous, but having a clear overview of what might happen next could mean the difference between escaping here alive or in a coffin. My pulse quickened at the realization of how close to death I was. All my life, a possible threat to my safety had dangled over my head like a Damocles sword. But it had always been abstract, never something palpable I could grasp. Now Dad's worries had manifested into reality, and my annoyance for his insistence to keep me heavily guarded at all times seemed childish and naive. Maybe it would have been good to prepare me in a similar way like he had Amo. Really show me the dangers of our world. Now, I was confronted with them with little preparation. These men wanted my father. But to get to him, they would certainly not shy back from hurting me. I'd never suffered a scar in my life. I prayed for the strength to remain dignified even if faced with torture. I wanted to do my family proud. These bikers wanted to sully the name of Vitiello, but I'd do my best to thwart them. I had to trust that I had more of my father in me than he ever wanted for me. I didn't have any weapons but one. Amo always said my looks were lethal. I had to hope I could prove him right.
Chapter 7. Maddox. Despite the bone-deep tiredness tugging at my brain, I couldn't fall asleep, even long after my club brothers had succumbed to their alcohol-induced slumber. Eventually, I gave up trying and spent the night on the porch, watching Marcella's hunched shadow on the hut, sensing that she too kept her eyes on me. The occasional owl hoot or a raccoon fight broke the peaceful silence. Only a small part of the reason for my watch was to make sure none of my uncle's men lay a hand on our captive, especially after Denver acted like a fucking animal and pissed in Marcella's cage. The other reason was I wanted to find out more about Marcella Vitiello, and through her, about her father. The name Vitiello had haunted my life for so long. It seemed stupid to let the opportunity pass to find out more about the family. When the first hazy sun rays peeked over the treetops, I flipped my cigarette into the ashtray and pushed away from the porch and headed toward the kennels. Deep down, I knew I should stay the fuck away from Snow White. For one, I called her Snow White, and second, I couldn't stop thinking about her. She sat atop the dog hut with her legs pulled against her chest and her chin resting on her folded arms atop her knees. Her eyes were glassy and red. She must have cried. It had been too dark for me to see. The thought of her tears made me uncomfortable. Marcella wasn't the person I wanted to lock in a cage and put through hell. She was only the bait for a much bigger prey. Her high heel rested on the hut beside her. The bucket was pushed into the corner as far from her as possible. But even if she had a will of steel, her body's needs must have won out through the night. The hut's wood was darker where Denver's piss had hit it. When she spotted me, she straightened and sat cross-legged, her back ramrod straight. Her blouse was wrinkled and her pants covered in dirt. But she still managed to look like this was exactly how it was meant to be. Shit. That girl still managed to look blasé, and like a goddamn society girl in a fucking kennel. The dogs whined and jumped up at the cages, eager for food. But that was Gray's job, not mine. I suspected he was nursing a hangover from our party last night. I'd send one of the prospects over to clean everything later. I stopped in front of the cages, regarding the girl inside for a few minutes without a word. Unfortunately, Marcella simply stared back at me, hiding her discomfort if she felt any. Your eyes are red. Did you cry?
My eyes are red because I fought sleep all night. I won't close my eyes with so many disgusting animals around.
She paused for emphasis.
Not to mention the dogs.
I smiled. Your insults pearl right off me. She slid off the hut with elegant ballet dancer feet, making sure to stay away from the piss spots, and grabbed her shoe. I had to stifle my amusement over her insistence to keep that shoe close. I won't go looking for that second shoe, no matter how expensive those heels were. And nobody cares how you look. You won't need fancy shoes anytime soon. Not to mention that the girl looked like a sex bomb even in her ripped clothes. She'd probably still look like a fucking model in a potato sack. Marcella smirked and came toward me, her hips swaying from side to side in the most mesmerizing way, before she stopped close to the bars. Last night when I'd caught Denver pissing against the hut, I'd seen behind her arrogant mask for a moment, but now, her expression was steel again. You care from the way you keep checking me out. I've been thinking about you all night. I raised an eyebrow. I won't release you for a quick fuck, no matter how fuckable you are, but nice try. Her lips thinned. I'd rather sleep in a kennel with those dogs than fuck you. But I can tell you've given it plenty of thought. Her eyes held so much arrogance I had to resist the urge to shove open the door and jerk her against me to shut her up. Early in the morning, I realized where I'd seen you before. In the club a few weeks ago. You watched me like all men do, as if you would sell your left kidney for a night with me. I grabbed a bar, chuckling. Damn, you are conceited as fuck. I was watching you because I was looking for an opportunity to kidnap you. Marcella grabbed the bar below my fingers, leaning forward, bringing our faces so much closer. The top buttons of her silk blouse had ripped off, giving me a view down her cleavage and the enticing swell of her breasts. I tore my gaze away, but was met with her soul-crushing eyes. I'd never seen eyes as blue as hers, but with a darker ring around them, never seen skin so immaculate, almost pearlescent, especially against her black hair. It was as if she'd really materialized out of a fairy tale. A very dirty adult fairy tale. Snow White indeed. But that's not why you couldn't take your eyes off me. I know the look you had on your face. You can deny it all you want, but I bet you fantasized about me after that day. I wish she was wrong, but the girl was right. She was so gorgeous that even after a night in a kennel without any access to a bathroom, she made the dolled-up girls in the clubhouse look like gutter rats. Your beauty won't get you out of here. It won't save you. Her smile widened as if she knew better, as if she was absolutely sure that she would be saved. Even your father won't find this place if that's what you hope for. He can't save you, I continued. My father's going to save me. He's going to kill everyone who stands in his way. Every man, every club girl, even your little brother. He'll kill them as brutally as he's capable of. And my father is the most capable man when it comes to brutality, Maddox. You'll watch them all bleed to death at your feet, their bowels strewn about the floor like confetti. Gray will die, and in the last moments of your life, you'll listen to his cries and feel guilty for bringing this upon him and yourself. Her words caught me by surprise, especially the vehemence and fierceness in them. This girl didn't seem like she shied back from the dirty side of life, but I doubted she'd ever seen blood and death, certainly not like I had. Her words also revealed how attentive she truly was. From seeing us interact for barely a moment, Marcella had already figured out that I felt very protective toward Gray, and she was trying to play on my worry for him. She was good, and more dangerous than I'd given her credit for. I needed to be careful around her for more than one reason. You think you know everything, don't you? But you don't, Snow White, I growled. Marcella's eyebrows twitched upward. I know how capable your father is. You only heard the stories, but I've seen him in action. I watched him dismember and skin my father and his men when I was only a little boy. I kneeled in their blood while your father kept hacking at their corpses like a goddamn maniac. I pissed my pants, terrified he'd find me and kill me too. I still hear the screams in my nightmares. And you want to tell me I don't know what your father's capable of? For the first time, my words broke through her cold, beautiful mask. Her face softened with realization, then understanding, and worse, compassion. Seeing the softer angles of her face hit me like a fist to the stomach.
Marcella. I'd heard the stories, countless versions of the events. If my father's men told the story, it glorified him and his actions as if he was superhuman. If outsiders whispered the stories in hushed voices in my presence, even their words still rang with respect and sick fascination. I'd been proud whenever I'd come across that story. Now, for the first time in my life, I wasn't. For the first time, I saw the other side of the coin. A very bloody, painful truth. Maddox's words had been vicious, but I'd seen the pain the memory brought in his blue eyes. I didn't want to imagine how horrible it must have been for a little boy to watch his father being killed, especially in such a brutal way. I masked my feelings, not wanting to feel pity for the man who had just kidnapped me. Whatever cruelty he'd suffered as a boy didn't justify his actions now. Then you should be reasonable and release me before my father gets his hands on you, I said. Maddox stepped back from the bars. I've been waiting all my life for the chance to kill your father. Nothing will take this from me. Nothing. There wasn't a flicker of doubt in Maddox's eyes. He would go through with his plan, and the whole club seemed to back him. My father's death was their only goal. They would stop at nothing. So your biker friends are willing to die so you can get your revenge? It's not just my revenge. Every single one of us hungers for revenge. Your father killed an entire chapter. My uncle lost his brother. None of us are going to rest before the score is settled, and we are all willing to die for it. You will, I said with a shrug, sounding certain even when I wasn't. Dad was powerful, but he might act without thinking where I was concerned. He didn't have any weakness except for his love for his family. He wouldn't listen to reason if my life was on the line. And Mom, the person who could usually reason with him when he was going berserk, was probably in no state to think clearly. Revenge is a waste of time and energy, I lied. Maddox smiled cockily. I had to admit I was surprised by his straight white teeth and pleasant smell. For some reason, I'd always imagined bikers to be a little raggy, with unwashed hair matted from their stinking helmet and yellow-tinged teeth. Even his hair looked silky smooth as it fell into his eyes. He pushed it back, a habit I'd noticed before. Do you use bleach to keep your teeth so white? With all the smoking you're doing, that seems like the only way for you to have nice teeth. Maddox shook his head with a disbelieving look, a chuckle bursting forth. Fuck, only you can think about someone's teeth while being in captivity by your father's mortal enemy. He leaned against the bars, and I tried to see him as a man I might have met in a club, not my enemy and captor. He would have been off limits then, with his tattoos and his non-familia heritage, and so I wouldn't have given him the second glance I gave him now. But he wasn't hard on the eye with his sharp-angled face, blue eyes, and tall muscled frame. The dark jeans, white tee, and black leather cut really worked in his favor, even when I'd never been a girl who liked the casual look. Playing the only card I had, using my best weapon, wouldn't be impossible with him. If it were any of the other bikers, even my life on the line couldn't have made me flirt with them. But with Maddox, he had been checking me out from the first moment he saw me. And not just in a captor-captive way. A man's desire was a thing I was familiar with, at least from a distance. And Maddox desired me. Not as much as revenge. Not yet. There isn't much else I can do, I said, my voice less hostile, softer, and almost playful. You could cry and beg for mercy. Would it change anything? I asked dryly. No. I don't like to waste my time, I said. Life's too short not to do the things we enjoy. He smiled, the dimple which wasn't really one but a scar appearing in his cheek. Then why are you wasting your time flirting with me, spoiled princess? Maybe you think I'm an animal, but my cock's not running the show. Sorry to disappoint you. He tipped an imaginary hat and stepped back from the bars, the smile dropping and his eyes becoming more vigilant. Keep your feet still, and don't flirt with my club brothers. They might take more than you bargained for. But if you keep your head down, then you'll soon return home without a hair out of place. Your inheritance will guarantee you a life full of shopping trips after you've dried your tears over your daddy's death. I stifled my fury. Do you think my father's death will dry your tears over having lost your father? He narrowed his eyes. I didn't just lose my father. He was ripped from me in the most barbaric way possible. And do you think by being barbaric you'll feel better? This isn't about feeling better. It's about revenge. But if you kill my father, you don't hurt him. My father doesn't fear death. If you want revenge, you need to hurt him like he hurt you. And how could I hurt him? I smiled bitterly. If Maddox really wanted revenge, he should hurt me. My father would suffer in the worst way if I paid for his sin of the past. Maddox tilted his head. I suppose hurting you would do the trick. I didn't say anything. I wasn't really sure what I was doing here. I wanted to be freed as soon as possible, but knowing Dad, he'd hand himself over in exchange for me without hesitation. You aren't the person we want. I've absolutely zero interest in hurting you. Your father will pay, not you. The words sounded final. If you kill my father, and let me live with the guilt of having been the reason for his death, I pay for his sins. But if I hurt you to make your father suffer, you pay for his sins too, only in a more painful way. I guess I'll pay either way, I said softly. But you're wrong. Physical pain wouldn't be more painful. Unless you've experienced both, you can't be sure. I guess I'll find out soon. You won't experience physical pain while you're here, but I can't spare you the grief of being the reason for your old man's death, he murmured. He hooked his thumbs in the pockets of his jeans. Maybe it's a consolation to know that he deserves whatever we have planned for him. My stomach lurched as my mind imagined the gruesome details. Maddox, I say quietly. Men like you and him always deserve death. At some point, the mutual killings has to stop. If you kill my father, my brother and uncles will seek revenge. Mateo loved my dad, and Romero respected Luca and was almost like a brother to him. They wouldn't rest until every biker had found a painful death. I live for revenge. Seems like a pointless life if it's only filled with a desire for revenge. Enough for me. Will your club brothers and uncle mourn you as deeply as my family will mourn my father? Will anyone miss you as profoundly because they loved you with all their heart? He gave me a harsh smile. I'm afraid I don't have time for more chit-chat. Have a good day. By not answering, he gave me the answer I'd expected. That's what I thought. He tilted his head in farewell and turned without another word. I had definitely hit a weak spot. Movement on the porch drew my eyes in. Another biker much older than Maddox, with shoulder-long black-gray hair, watched me. Goosebumps rose on my skin at the look in his eyes. Maddox passed him by on his way into the clubhouse, saying something to him that had the man look away from me briefly. But my reprieve was short-lived. Soon his greedy gaze returned to me, and now Maddox was gone. I could only hope my words hadn't driven him away. I had a feeling he was my best bet to get through this unscathed.
Chapter 8. Maddox. Cody kept observing the kennels like a wolf on the hunt. He had his eyes set on Snow White, sensing easy pussy. He'd never had much of an understanding of the meaning of consent. I stopped by his side on the porch. Don't you have better things to do than to salivate over the Vitiello girl? He scoffed. I don't spend half my morning gossiping with the cunt. I'm trying to gather information from our captive while she's in our hands. I lied. It had been the original plan, but whenever I was near her, any carefully laid out plans evaporated. What kind of info? How much cock she can take into that filthy mouth of hers? Just stay away from her. We both know your dick has a life of its own. I strode into the house and was immediately hit with the smell of a wild party. After hours outside in the fresh air, the stench almost made me pass out. Gray had thrown up in an ice bucket, and someone else had pissed into a beer bottle. That, mixed with the odor of a dozen sweaty bodies, was a potent mixture. I found Earl already up and in his chair at our meeting table, smoking a cigar. He could hold his liquor pretty well after decades of training. A half-naked girl lay on top of the table, fast asleep. You left the party early, he said, not bothering to take the smoke out of his mouth. I've had enough parties to last me a lifetime, and I still don't think we have reason to celebrate just yet. When I was your age, I didn't say no to a party or pussy. So nothing changed, I said with a grin. He chuckled, then coughed, and finally took out the cigar. What did the bitch say? Did she cry and beg you to release her? I shook my head. She's too proud. Got more of her father in her than I thought. Earl's expression darkened. We'll see how long she keeps that Vitiello arrogance. Something in Earl's tone made me uneasy. If he disliked someone, truly disliked someone, that person better make sure to stay away from him. When are you going to ask Vitiello to exchange himself for his daughter? I want to get this over with and finally get my hands on Vitiello himself. Earl didn't react, only squinted down at the cigar in his hands. That's still the plan, right? After my initial reluctance regarding the kidnapping, Earl had insisted we'd keep Marcella as briefly as possible. Now, he seemed to be having his thinking hat on again, and that was never a good thing. It is, but it would be too easy, and that's the last thing I want to give Vitiello, an easy way out of this. He needs to suffer emotionally before we really tear him apart. I was the last person who wanted to spare Luca Vitiello pain in any form. He needed to suffer as much as possible for ruining my childhood. We've gone through plenty of shit, but we need to stay on track or we risk getting our asses kicked again. I'm sure the asshole already suffered plenty after he found out we got our hands on his daughter. One night? That's what you call plenty of suffering? You pissed your goddamn pants every night for the first 3 months you lived with me. That's suffering, Matt. Let Vitiello piss his pants from fear for his precious daughter's life. Once he's come crawling, we can still exchange her for him and torture him to death. Earl's voice made it clear that the discussion was over for him, and he being as stubborn as a mule, I knew it was futile to keep talking. A man's scream rang out, followed by cursing and Marcella's cry of pain. What now? Earl muttered, annoyed, pushing out of his chair, but I was already on my way out of the room. I stormed out of the house, my eyes darting to the kennels where the noise was coming from. The dogs were barking up a storm, jumping against the cages, but my eyes were drawn to Marcella's cage. Cody was inside, grabbing Marcella by the arm and shaking her. He slapped Marcella across the face so hard she fell to the ground with a yelp. I charged down the pathway and into the cage and grabbed his arm, stopping him from hitting her again. What the fuck is going on here? I growled. Marcella sat on the ground, touching her cheek, which was bright red. From the way she pressed her lips together, I could tell she was fighting tears. Answer me, I hissed, giving Cody a shake. He shook off my grip and clutched the side of his head where he was bleeding profusely from a cut in his hairline. He made a move as if to attack her again, but I shoved him against the bars. What happened here? Why the fuck wasn't anyone answering me? The whore attacked me with her fucking shoe, Cody seethed. I followed his pointer finger toward the high heel on the dirty floor, and almost started laughing. That's a Louis Vuitton, not some shoe, Marcella said haughtily, still holding her cheek but no longer appearing close to tears. I had no clue what that meant. I owned exactly 2 pairs of shoes. I sent her a death glare. You better shut up. Cody was a vindictive asshole. Provoking him would not only make her life a whole lot more difficult, but also mine if I wanted to make sure she got out of this unscathed. Earl stood on the porch, watching over the events. I wasn't sure what his angle was, so he probably wouldn't keep Marcella safe. It was ironic that it fell upon me to protect my worst enemy's offspring. What were you doing in her cage? I was supposed to feed her. The cunt doesn't deserve food if you ask me. Nobody asks you, Cody. Next time, you better pay attention before she pokes your eye out, I told him. Or better yet, let me or Gray handle the meals. I preferred Cody far away from her. Eventually, he wouldn't be able to keep his ugly dick in his pants. I really didn't want to add that kind of shit to my list of sins. Whatever, Cody muttered, rubbing his head as he left the cage. The last look he sent Marcella told me I'd have more sleepless nights. He stalked away, muttering insults. Earl shook his head at Cody. His disapproval would only increase Cody's desire to pay Marcella back for humiliating him. I turned to Marcella. Her blouse had lost another button and was covered in grime, just like her feet, but the look in her eyes was as proud as the first time I'd seen her. I held out my hand to her, and to my surprise, she took it without hesitation. I pulled her to her feet. She stumbled against me, and I wasn't entirely sure if it was an accident. Instead of pushing her away at once, I enjoyed the feel of her breasts pressed against my chest for a moment, as I looked down at her face. Grabbing her shoulders, I moved her back. "Does it hurt?" I asked, motioning at her red cheek. She shrugged. "Your biker buddy has it worse. I think I knocked his last brain cells out of his head." "Maybe you should get down from your high horse before someone knocks you down. Everyone around here is eager to break the spoiled princess. Keep that in mind before you act out again." "My father will save me soon. I bet he's already on his way with an army of loyal followers at his heels. And you'll find I'm difficult to break," she said simply. Her absolute certainty that her father would save her rubbed me the wrong way. Her absolute trust in her father enraged me. I wanted her to doubt him, to hate him. I wanted her to show a crack in her cold New York princess facade. This side of her was too much like her father. I smirked. "Maybe because nobody's tried to break you yet, Snow White." I stepped closer again until I towered over her and inhaled her scent. "You grew up in a castle behind protective walls built by your fucking father." Fuck. Part of me wanted to break her, but the other wanted to find out more about her, wanted to win her over to my side. Breaking women wasn't my thing anyway. Cody and a few other guys, on the other hand, might find it enjoyable. Marcella only watched me, but there was a flicker of unease in her eyes. She knew what I said was true. She'd had a very sheltered life. The only problems she'd encountered so far were if her shoes didn't match her dress. I came from a very different world, one filled with blood and pain. "Do you want to break me, Maddox?" Marcella asked, and the way she said my name, her tongue caressing every syllable, raised goosebumps on my skin. Fuck. Never before had a woman given me goosebumps. Her blue eyes seemed to bury in my soul, digging and searching. "I'm pretty busy." I backed away and picked up the shoe. "I'm afraid I'll have to confiscate this until your release. Though, I'm sure you've got an impressive collection at home and won't miss a pair." "When will I be released?" I walked out of the cage and closed the door. "When your daddy is ready to hand himself over." She didn't need to know the truth. Maybe she'd finally learn to despise her father, if she thought he hesitated to offer himself for her. "Will you give me clothes to change or an opportunity to wash myself?" I shook my head. I wasn't sure if she was trying to piss me off on purpose. "I'll send someone down with a bucket of water later. But I don't think any of the girls want their clothes ruined in the kennels." "You'd probably prefer me to sit here naked," she muttered. "No," I said. And I wasn't even lying, because I had a feeling seeing Marcella naked would mess with my brain in a way that I really didn't need. I got off my bike. Since Marcella's arrival 3 days ago, I always parked my bike farther down the hill so I had to walk past the kennels and could catch a glimpse of her. What I saw made me pause. Her blouse was ripped, one of those fancy see-through sleeves hanging by a thread. This morning before my run, that definitely hadn't been the case yet. Fuck. Why did Earl have to insist I check our gun and drug storage? I made a beeline toward her, my pulse already speeding up. What happened? Marcella poked around in her bowl of scrambled eggs. I got why she didn't eat them. They looked like they had already been eaten. Someone needs to take a cooking course, she said, as if she didn't know what I was referring to. She had a talent to drive me up the wall. I unlocked the door, and a subtle tension entered Marcella's body. I'd noticed it before, and as usual, it rubbed me the wrong way. I motioned at her ripped sleeve. What happened? She finally looked up from the bowl. Her cheek was still slightly swollen from when Cody had slapped her, and the sight still upped my rage. Cody wasn't happy with my refusal to acknowledge his presence, so he made himself unmistakably known. I gritted my teeth against the onslaught of fury I felt toward the idiot. He always needed someone to pick on, preferably someone female. What exactly did he do? Marcella narrowed her eyes in that assessing way that she had. Why do you care? You are our leverage against your father. I won't allow anyone to mess up my plans by damaging the leverage. Newsflash, the leverage has been damaged before. She motioned at her cheek. And I doubt ripping my sleeve will be the last thing Cody does. He seems to like it too much. She tried to sound flippant and cool, as if nothing that could happen concerned her in the slightest. But there was the slightest tremble in her voice that betrayed her cool to be a charade. Cody won't touch a fucking hair on your head again. I'll make sure of it. Your last warning didn't have the intended effect, and your uncle doesn't seem to care if he damages the goods. That was true. Earl's concern over Marcella's physical intactness was limited to her being alive long enough to torture Vitiello with her safety and blackmail him into handing himself over. My phone rang. I picked it up. It was Leroy, one of the prospects detached to our old clubhouse to keep watch. His breathing was harsh. Matt, they burned down everything. His words tumbled over each other, ripe with fear. Slow down. Who burned down what? I had an inkling what might have happened, though. Marcella put down her plate and pushed to her feet. I realized it might not be the best idea to let her find out too much. Even if she didn't have any implants that we could detect, I had a feeling that she was clever enough to use any morsel of information against us. Listening to Leroy's rambles, I left the kennel and locked it again, to Marcella's obvious displeasure. As I'd feared, Vitiello had burned down our previous clubhouse, which had also been in a secret location and not easy to detect. You safe? I asked the prospect. I don't know. A few of them followed me, but I must have shaken them off. I don't see them anymore. You know protocol. Don't come here until you're absolutely sure nobody's following you. Until then, stay with one of the pass-arounds. Going to an old lady would be too risky, and until we could be sure our safe houses actually were safe, he needed to stay away from those as well. Will do, he said. He still sounded haunted. Ignoring Marcella's curious expression, I hung up and jogged up to the clubhouse to give Earl the bad news. I found him in his office with a club girl, one of the pass-arounds on his lap. In the past, the sight had always made me furious on Mom's behalf, but she always said she didn't care, as long as she was his old lady. Bikers couldn't be faithful, especially the press. I thought she was being too easy on Earl, but her gratefulness after he'd taken her into his house, in bed, after Dad's brutal death reached farther than my reasoning. Club business, I said. Earl unceremoniously pushed the girl off his lap, and I didn't look anywhere near his groin area. I'd seen his dick on too many occasions like this already. What's so important? Bad news about our old clubhouse. Earl leaned forward on his chair as if he was preparing to lunge. Vitiello found it and burned it down. He must have hoped to find his daughter there, and probably wanted to send us a message with its destruction. Earl jumped to his feet. Motherfucker. I'll give him a fucking message if he wants one. He looked livid. His head didn't just get red. It got purple, and a vein in his forehead swelled grotesquely. That was never a good thing. He's trying to intimidate us. If we ignore his message, this will only enrage him more. Ignore it? The fuck I'll do that. He needs to realize who's pulling the strings, and it's sure as fuck not him. What's your plan? I asked carefully as he paced the room, cracking his tattooed knuckles. Instead of an answer, he stalked out of his office like a man on a mission. Gather at the kennels, he barked at the guys lounging in the common room. Most of the club brothers were on runs, but Cody, Gunner, Gray, and a prospect were around. They all got up and sent me questioning looks as if I knew what kind of madness Earl had in his mind. Take your phone with you, Gray, Earl ordered. I followed Earl as he rushed outside. Why do you need a phone? You can use mine as well. Calling Vitiello is a big risk, Prez. He can track us. Cody butted in. I almost rolled my eyes, as if Earl didn't know that. Everyone who's been doing illegal shit for more than a day knows how easily phone calls could be tracked. Do I look like an idiot? Earl snarled. It's to record a video for the motherfucker Vitiello. My pulse sped up, wondering what kind of video Earl had in mind. Marcella's expression turned worried when she spotted us heading her way. Hey, princess. Time to show your daddy not to mess with us. Marcella's eyes darted to me, then to Earl. Get naked, Earl ordered. My head swiveled around. Why? I asked, my voice alarmed. Someone's eager to see pussy, Cody snickered, mistaking my worry for excitement. He was such a fucking moron. Earl, on the other hand, seemed to know exactly how I felt about the situation. Can you upload the video on the internet without any link to this location? Earl asked Gray. Gray looked put on the spot. I guess so. Earl slapped him over the head. I guess so won't do it if you don't want Vitiello to skin your balls. I can do it, Gray said quietly. You want to post a video of Marcella naked online? It wasn't as bad as what I'd feared when Earl had asked her to get naked. And it would definitely coax a strong reaction from Vitiello. Earl nodded, but he looked at Marcella. Get naked. She shook her head held high. I certainly won't undress in front of any of you. Oh, you won't? Then we'll have to do it for you, Earl said with a nasty grin. Cody was already salivating at the prospect of getting his hands on Marcella. I can do it, he said, sounding like he'd never seen a pussy before. No, I want to do it, I growled, sending Cody a scowl. Then I glanced at Earl and allowed my expression to become leering. I want Vitiello to know that I'm the one who undressed his precious princess. Marcella sent me a disgusted look. Earl gave me a benevolent smile. Go ahead. He nodded at Gray. Get your phone ready. I unlocked the door and stepped inside the cage, straightening my cut so it would look good in the recording. The rest of us will howl and hit the bars in the background, Earl instructed, as if Cody needed an incentive to do so. Gray positioned himself in a corner of the kennel so he could film Marcella, but also the others as they swarmed around the kennel. The dogs began to bark and jump against the bars, fired up by the heated atmosphere. Marcella took a step back when I approached her, but then she caught herself, straightened her shoulders, and lifted her head to send me the most condescending look I'd ever seen, as if I was a cockroach not worthy to be squashed under her expensive shoe. Anger rushed through my veins. In moments like this, she reminded me too much of her father. Why was I even trying to protect her? I stopped right in front of her, torn between fury and concern. This was quickly getting out of hand. "Get her out of these clothes," Earl shouted. "I'll count to 5, then I'll start to record," Gray said. I reached for Marcella's blouse and noticed the slight tremor in her body. My anger quickly evaporated, but I couldn't reason with Earl, and I sure as fuck wouldn't allow Cody to put his hands on her. I began to unbutton the remaining buttons of her blouse. My fingers brushed across Marcella's skin, and goosebumps erupted all over her body. But all I could think about was that I'd never touched skin softer than hers. She jerked back when I reached her midriff. "I'll do it myself." "Hurry the fuck up, will you?" I snarled, knowing this would reach Vitiello. I took a step back and watched as Marcella unbuttoned the last button, then pushed her blouse over her shoulders. After that, she shimmied out of her black pants. The fabric floated to the dirty ground, leaving her in black lace panties and a black strapless bra. I didn't even try not to check her out. It would have been physically impossible. The draw was simply too strong. "The rest, too," Earl growled. Marcella's fingers trembled when she unhooked her bra, and she swallowed visibly when it dropped to the ground. Her pink nipples puckered. I dragged my eyes away from her round breasts and met her gaze, trying not to act like a fucking pervert. But it cost me every ounce of self-control I never knew I had. In the background, Earl and the others began to howl and hit the bars. The dogs' barking soon became shrill and excited. Marcella hooked her fingers in the waistband of her panties, her hateful eyes hitting me before she shoved the flimsy fabric down. For a heartbeat, my gaze darted down, like a reflex I couldn't control. But there wasn't enough time to soak up the full enormity of her beauty. I only caught a glimpse of a triangle of black and slim thighs before I caught myself. I fought the urge to step in front of her to shield her from the hungry eyes of the others. I didn't want to share this sight with anyone, even though I didn't have any right to see it myself. Fuck. I never cared if any of the girls I slept with were passed around my club brothers. So why did I care about Marcella? "Turn around," Earl ordered. Marcella's wrath now hit him. She was trembling, and fear swam in the depth of her blue eyes, but you couldn't tell from her cold expression. With a grace few people would have managed in a dirty kennel, surrounded by leering men and raging dogs, Marcella turned around slowly. I realized I'd stopped breathing when the last item of her clothing had hit the ground, and quickly sucked in a deep breath. I needed to get a fucking grip. I focused on Cody, trying to gauge his reaction. He was practically salivating, eager to mount her. Luckily, Earl's expression was mostly calculating, even if he too watched her with a sort of slack-jawed hunger, which any man would upon seeing Marcella's body. Eventually, Earl motioned Gray to turn off the recording. Marcella stood still, her arms hanging loosely by her side. Looking the way she did, she had no reason to be shy about her body. But that wasn't why she seemed completely unfazed by her nakedness. She was too proud to show any weakness. I wondered what was really going on in her mind. Let's hope for you that your daddy gets the message, Earl said before he turned and headed back to the clubhouse, probably to dip his dick in club girl pussy. Gray, the prospect, and Gunnar soon followed him. Only Cody remained, still checking out Marcella. "Why don't you fuck off?" I muttered. "Why? So you can dip your cock in that virgin pussy? I didn't hear you call dibs." I glanced at Marcella. Virgin? She had been dating that Italian douchebag for over 2 years. I knew the Italian mob was traditional, but even they must have stepped into the 21st century by now. Marcella's face was still hateful and eerily proud. "Nobody's going to call dibs," I growled. "We'll see," Cody said, and finally turned around and left. The moment he was gone and out of earshot, I turned to Marcella. "You can get dressed." She smiled harshly, but I didn't miss the glistening of her eyes. "Are you sure that's what you want? Don't you want to call dibs on my virgin pussy?" She spat out the last 2 words in disgust. It was obvious that she wasn't used to talking dirty. I almost asked if she was indeed a virgin. Then I decided it was better if I didn't know. It was completely irrelevant to our plan, and yet my thoughts circled around this tidbit of information since Cody had brought it up like flies around shit. "Just get dressed," I said sharply, annoyed at myself. Marcella covered her breasts as she bent down to retrieve her clothes, then tiptoed toward the hut where she draped them as if they weren't ripped and dusty. "I didn't know this would happen," I said, even though I wasn't sure why I was telling her this. I didn't have to justify myself or the club's actions to her. "You enjoyed it," she muttered as she pulled her panties back on. I'd seen her wash them in the bucket of water from my window last night. There was no denying it. Marcella was prettier than in my imagination. Fuck. Pretty was an insult for her. Are there any men who wouldn't? "At least one," she said as she dressed herself fully. I wondered whom she was referring to. "Your fiancé." "Ex-fiancé." She fixed me with a look. "So, what's next? Are you going to post a video of every biker having a go at me?" My pulse sped up. "No," I growled. The mere idea of letting that happen set my blood aflame. "We aren't animals." She gave me a doubtful look. I couldn't even blame her after the show Earl had just put on.
Marcella. The fierceness in Maddox's voice caught me by surprise. "Why do you care? Or do you want me for yourself?" I asked. I resisted the urge to rub my arms. That wouldn't get rid of the dirty feeling on my skin where they had leered at me. Focusing on Maddox had helped a little. His gaze, other than that of his biker friends, hadn't made me feel dirty. I wasn't sure what it was about him that calmed and exhilarated me all at once. It was an absolutely irrational feeling. Still, my stomach dropped when I thought of the recording that would soon find its way into the internet, onto millions of computer screens, even Dad's and Almo's. I hoped they wouldn't watch. I also wished none of the girls who despised me would see me like that. But that was wishful thinking. They would all jump at the chance to see me humiliated, at the mercy of those bastards. I wouldn't allow them to make me feel degraded. Maddox stalked out of the cage and locked it, as if he couldn't stand another moment in my proximity. He lit a cigarette and glowered up at the clubhouse but didn't answer my question. I wasn't blind. I had seen the way he looked at me, no matter how hard he tried not to look. He took a deep pull from the cigarette and exhaled. "I'm a better choice than Cody," he muttered. My stomach coiled at the implication. The mere idea of Cody touching me made me want to throw up. Maddox, on the other hand? I wasn't repulsed by his body. and I didn't dislike him as much as could be expected. Not to mention that he was probably the only chance to get out of here. None of the other bikers had shown the slightest interest in my well-being. You aren't any kind of choice. Nobody asked me what I want. Maddox nodded. I've gotta go. Fear overwhelmed me, and I lunged forward, grabbing onto the bars. What if Cody comes down here to get what he wants? I doubt your uncle would care. Maddox tensed. But I couldn't read his expression when he turned to me. A few blonde strands fell over his baby blue eyes, and the gash that looked like a peculiar dimple deepened further as he scowled. Cody can't do anything without my uncle's permission. Was that supposed to calm me? Cody was like a starving man who'd spotted his next meal when he looked at me. Maddox's gaze held mine, and what I saw in his was pure hunger. I shivered and pressed even closer to the bars. You can't let him have me, I whispered. I could be yours, I let my eyes say. He wanted me, had wanted me from the very first moment. I needed him on my side if I wanted to survive this. I couldn't rely on Dad and Mateo to save me. A war was raging in Maddox's eyes. Maybe he realized why I was flirting with him. He flicked away his cigarette, stomped on it before he moved very close to me, only the bars between us. The dogs let out yaps of excitement. He brought his face so close our lips were almost brushing. I'm not stupid, he growled. Don't think you can manipulate me. I'm not like that sappy ex-fiancé. His furious eyes darted down to my mouth, wanting despite everything. He suspected me, and yet he couldn't stop wanting what he shouldn't. I didn't look away. I exhaled, then drew in his scent, a mix of leather, smoke, and sandalwood. Nothing I'd ever appreciated, but Maddox made it work. My body wondered, longed for something I'd been denied for so long. Who says I'm manipulating you? Then I amended. But even if I were trying to do it, you don't have to let me succeed. You could just use me like you think I'm using you. I don't have to use you. You are at our mercy, Marcella. Maybe you forget. I could do with you whatever I wanted without any consequences whatsoever. You could, but that's not who you are. You want me, but you want me willing. Maddox's knuckles turned white as his grip around the bars tightened. You don't know me. No, I don't. But I know one thing for a fact, I whispered, and then brushed my lips so very lightly over his, trying to ignore how my body heated from the light contact. You can't stop thinking about me, and after today you'll dream about my body and how it would be to touch me every waking moment and even when you sleep. He jerked back from my lips as if they'd electrocuted him. I, too, had felt the zap rushing through my body at the brief kiss. Don't play with things you can't control, Snow White. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. He turned around and left. He was probably right. Maddox was a different type of man than I was used to. He was crude and didn't have an ounce of respect for my father. He'd love to piss him off. But that was part of why I was drawn to him, despite the horrible situation. Not that my desires held any meaning. I needed to get out of here, no matter what. Maddox kept his distance the rest of the day, and luckily no one else came by either. My stomach rumbled again. After the recording, I'd been sure I'd never be able to eat again. I felt so sick. The last few days, I'd longed for my cell phone. Now I was glad it was gone. My Instagram and Messenger were probably bursting with messages because of the nude recording. I shoved the thought away and glanced to the left. Satan placed the kennel beside mine again. She probably was hungry too. I hadn't seen anyone bringing the dogs food. I hopped off the hut, the only place in the shadow, and moved cautiously closer to the dog. She threw me a quick look, then paced back and forth in front of the cage door again. Her water bowl was empty too. I peered toward the house. In the afternoon heat, the dog needed something to drink. Even I knew that. I considered calling Maddox. Maybe he was in his room and would hear me, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. The front of the house opened and I called, "Hey, the dogs need water and food." Then I realized it was Cody. I snapped my mouth shut, but he already headed my way with a wide grin. I stepped back from the bars, wanting as much distance between us as possible. "What do you want, princess?" I swallowed my revulsion and pride. The dogs weren't fed today, and Satan doesn't have any water. "The dogs are more vicious when they're hungry. There's a dog fight tonight, so they need to be sharp." I grimaced. I doubt they can fight if they die of thirst. Cody leaned against the bars, letting his eyes travel along my body in a very disgusting way. "What do I get in return for giving them water?" I scoffed. "Not what you want." His face hardened. He picked up the hose they used to fill the bowls, but instead of pointing it there, he brandished the end at me. My eyes widened a second before cold water hit my chest. I stumbled back, but there was nowhere I could seek cover unless I crawled into the dog hut, which I'd never do. The dogs barked excitedly. I turned around so the water hit my back. Eventually, Cody turned the water off. I was completely drenched. Looking over my shoulder, I saw Cody grinning maliciously. "There's your water. You sure you don't want to give me a little something so I fill the dogs' bowls?" I scowled, and he tossed the hose away before he walked off. My kennel was completely wet, but the water slid down the slight slope toward the cage doors and didn't reach the other cages. Satan got on her belly and tried to squeeze her muzzle under the gap between the bars and the ground to lick water up, but she didn't succeed. I picked up my bowl, which was filled with water, but the thing didn't fit through the bars. Satan watched me closely. I didn't have any experience with dogs, so I couldn't tell if she was friendly or waiting for a chance to eat me. My pity for the beast won out even as my pulse quickened. I scooped up water in my hands and carefully moved them through the bars. After a moment of hesitation, Satan approached me. I tensed when she opened her muzzle, but only her tongue darted out, and she began to drink eagerly. I repeated the process several times until she seemed satisfied. "What are you doing?" Maddox asked, startling me so much I bruised my wrists when I jerked them back through the bars. Satan let out a sharp bark at the quick movement. "Giving her water." Maddox scanned my drenched clothes. "And why are you wet?" Cody hosed me down instead of giving the dogs water when I asked him to fill their bowls. Maddox's expression flickered with fury. "Asshole," he muttered. Then he frowned. "Why do you even care if the dogs have water or not? They're locked inside a cage without a fault of their own, just like me." Maddox shook his head with a strange smile as he picked up the hose and filled all the bowls with water. By now, it was getting dark. "Is it true that the dogs have to starve so they fight more viciously tonight?" "Yeah," Maddox said. "Earl's orders." "It's wrong. Dogfights are disgusting. I feel pity for them." "I don't like the fights either. But the Prez makes the decisions and we all follow them even if we hate them." I was surprised by his honesty, and I could see in his face that he hadn't meant to reveal as much. "Were you against kidnapping me?" Maddox shook his head with a strange smile. "Do you need a blanket or towel?" "No, it's warm enough." He tipped an imaginary hat before he headed back to the clubhouse. While he perched on the banister and lit up a cigarette, I had a feeling he'd watch me as long as he could forego sleep. Soon Denver, who hadn't dared come near me again, and Gunner picked up several dogs, among them Satan, and led them away. Deep in the woods, lights were set up, and I couldn't make out any details. Yet, when the first snarls and later yelps and whines echoed through the area, I closed my eyes and held my hands over my ears.
Chapter 9. Maddox. The dogfights were absolutely unnecessary, especially because tonight we didn't even have any visitors who could bet on the outcome. This was solely for Earl's and the club's entertainment. When I was a kid, Earl had forced me to watch the dogs tear each other apart, but by now I was old enough to stay away. Gray wasn't as lucky. Earl still thought he needed to harden the boy by making him watch this sadistic spectacle. I tried to ignore the sound of the fighting and watched Marcella instead. She was sunken into herself, cupping her ears with her palms. She'd surprised me today. I wouldn't have thought she cared for anything but herself. Seeing her help Satan by risking her fingers had done something to me I couldn't quite explain. It was close to midnight when Cody and Gray led the surviving dogs back to the kennels while Earl shot the ones that were too badly injured. Marcella sat up when Satan limped into the kennel and rolled up on the ground. Cody said something to her that made her face twist with disgust. I straightened, ready to rush down there and ram my boot into Cody's ass. He was pissing me off more every damn day, and unlike Denver, he seemed content to ignore my warnings. His interest in Marcella was getting out of hand. Finally, he walked off in the direction where Earl always shot the dogs, probably to watch eagerly. Marcella said something to Gray and he shrugged. I narrowed my eyes, wondering what they were talking about. She said more, and Gray nodded. Then he headed to the shed with the dog food and grabbed a handful. I tensed when he handed it to Marcella through the bars, but she simply took it without trying anything. Gray headed back up to the clubhouse, looking pale. What did she want? Dog food for Satan? And? That's it. She asked me if I was okay because I looked sick, he said, rubbing the back of his head in embarrassment. Tell Earl you don't want to watch. I did, but he doesn't care. Today was really bad. He shook his head as if he didn't want to think, much less talk about it. I need to drink myself into a stupor, he muttered and disappeared inside. I resisted the urge to go to the kennels for a few minutes, but then the draw was too strong. Marcella looked up when a twig broke under my boot. She kneeled beside the bars and tossed food at Satan, who ate it, but was obviously too exhausted to stand and go closer. It's barbaric, she seethed. She's bleeding. There's a tear in her ear and muzzle. If those are her only injuries, the other dog's probably dead, I said. Satan was Earl's favorite for a reason. She was big for a female, and since she had a litter, which Earl took from her right after birth, she was a vicious fighter within the ring. She shouldn't be forced to fight against other dogs. I watched her, not saying anything. The moonlight made her skin glow, and her hair shone like petroleum. But what really made her gorgeous in that moment was the caring expression she had for the dog. She slanted me a look, tossed the remaining food toward Satan, and cleaned her palms on her pants before she got up. She approached me with a look that made my fucking stomach flip. She grabbed the bars and peered up at me. People who enjoy dogfights usually enjoy torturing humans too. I don't trust Cody and Earl. Do you? I laughed. They are not my enemies. Cody sure is. I shrugged. I can handle Cody. I didn't trust Cody, and I trusted Earl to some extent. He's not going to stop coming to the kennels. He's drawn to me. He can't stand being rejected. Eventually, he'll take what he wants, Maddox. I knew she was right. But I couldn't let her make us out to be allies. We weren't. She was the captive and the daughter of my worst enemy. She leaned even closer, her voice low. Do you really want to come down here one day and find out he forced himself on me? Do you want that on your conscience? I gritted my teeth. Could you really live with yourself if Cody took what you deny yourself? I jerked back, my pulse racing. Her words seemed to sink into me and fester. Don't, I warned, but didn't even know how to finish the sentence. I whirled around and stalked back to the clubhouse. Fuck. Marcella Vitiello was trying to lead me around by the balls to save herself, and I had half a mind to let her try. I risked another glance over my shoulder back at the kennels as I headed toward the clubhouse. She was still pressed up to the bars watching me. Her hair was a mess and her clothes had seen better days, but she looked as if it was exactly meant to be like that, as if she were staging some fancy post-apocalyptic Vogue photo shoot. I gritted my teeth and tore my eyes away. It became harder to ignore her, to forget her. My dreams were completely out of my control by now, and after what I'd seen today, things would certainly not improve. But my cock was the least of my problems. Cody's horniness was the real fucking problem. Seeing her naked would give him a ton of new fantasies he was going to follow up on at some point. I couldn't let that happen. The reasons for my need to protect Marcella were fucking irrelevant. All that mattered was to get her out of danger. Her father would pay for his sins, not his daughter. Maybe she was spoiled and had led a good life thanks to his rotten character. But that didn't warrant a punishment. And I was certainly the last person who should judge a person's blood money. Pacing the porch, I smoked 2 cigarettes before a plan formed in my mind. It was risky on so many levels, but the only other thing I could come up with was letting Marcella go, and hell would freeze over before that happened. She was our ticket to Vitiello's demise. I put out my cigarette in the overflowing ashtray and went up to my room, determined to talk to Earl in the morning. After dogfights, he wasn't in a state to discuss anything with him. I perched on the windowsill. Marcella's words repeated in my head. What if he takes what you deny yourself? Fuck. I would spend the night watching over the kennels again. After a quick power nap in the morning, I went in search of Earl, but didn't get a chance to talk to him because he sent me out to collect money from one of our dealers. Luckily, Cody wasn't around, so I didn't have to be worried for Marcella. I just have to hurry the fuck up. When I came home late in the afternoon, Cody's bike was already parked in front of the house. I dismounted my Harley quickly and jogged up the path until I spotted the kennels. Marcella sat next to the bars and was talking to Satan from the looks of it. The dog was stretched out beside her, only the bars between them. Reassured, I went inside. Following the sounds of bullets hitting cans, I headed through the back door and found my uncle in his favorite rocking chair, shooting at cans on tree stumps. His cut with the stitched words President of the Tartarus MC hung over the backrest. As usual, my chest swelled seeing it. One day I would wear that cut, would lead our club. For a long time I hadn't considered it an option. Had been certain Gray would follow in his father's footsteps. But 3 years ago, Earl had told me that I, and not Gray, would be the future prez of Tartarus. I had been more than a little surprised, and Gray had been devastated. But Earl was a stubborn asshole and wouldn't change his mind once he'd come to a decision. Earl glanced over his shoulder, then he kept shooting at the cans. Don't stand behind my fucking back. It's giving me a fucking itch. I sank down in the rocking chair beside his, but firmly planted my feet on the ground to stop it from moving. I hated the monotone back and forth. I preferred to make progress. The feeling of bridging hundreds of miles on my bike. That was the kind of motion I liked. Well, there was one back and forth motion I didn't mind. Spill, you're fucking with my aim. Have you made more plans with the girl you haven't told me about? I asked. Earl's face pinched angrily. If I have, you'll find out when I see fit, boy. I nodded grudgingly. I thought this was our plan, our chance to get revenge on my dad's murderer. I thought we were in this together, but now you're doing your own thing. Earl sighed and leaned back in his chair, the gun balancing on his thigh. You'll get your revenge, don't you worry. We need to use the Vitiello brat as long as we have her. Really drive her father to the brink. See that Italian asshole crumple bit by bit. I braced my elbows on my knees. You got it, I said, then smiled twistedly. That's why I want her in my bed. Cody, who had stepped outside without me noticing, let out a disbelieving laugh. Right. But I ignored him and just continued. Nobody has more reason to get revenge than me. Earl regarded me curiously and lit his cigarette. Why the change of heart? Didn't you say she's just bargain and we shouldn't hurt her? Now you want to drag her into your bed? I had absolutely no business protecting her. Her father had killed my father brutally before my eyes, but I couldn't allow Cody to get his hands on her. Not dragging anymore, I said with a grin. Girl's been flirting with me like crazy, probably trying to get on my good side. I suppose she's used to getting what she wants by using her tits and cunt. I bet she is. She's got great tits and a pretty cunt as far as I could see, so she's got plenty to work with. I lit my own cigarette, allowing my grin to become dirty. If she wants to influence me with her pretty cunt, who am I to deny her? Especially when it'll piss Vitiello off. Cody's face became more and more frustrated. Be careful not to fall into her trap. I bet she's led more than one man around by his dick. Earl still watched me. His poker face was one I'd learned to be wary of. Don't worry. My hatred for what her father's done will help me. I sure as fuck won't be led around by my dick. But if she wants a good biker creamin', who am I to say no? I chuckled to myself, grabbing my crotch. Earl let out his raspy laugh. Horny as fuck. For all I care, you can fill her holes as long as that's not messing with our plan. You're the one who deserves some Vitiello cunt, like he said. I won't forbid it, but watch your back. I'm sure the pretty face is a mask, and the cunt will stab you in the back the moment you don't pay attention. Cody crossed his arms over his scrawny chest. Maybe he should restrict his physical movements to bench press instead of fucking every available pussy in the club. I think it would be only fair if each of us got a go at her. We're all in this. I don't think it's fair if only Mad gets his dick wet. Mad had to watch his father and his club brothers being ripped apart by Luca Vitiello, and risked his fucking hide trailing and kidnapping Marcella. How's that unfair? Cody turned to Earl. I listened to him trying his damnedest to get his dirty hands on Marcella, and while Earl shook his head, I wondered how much longer he'd deny Cody's request. Keeping the mood good in the club was one of the main tasks of a prez. So far, none of the other club brothers had openly asked for a go at Marcella, but if Cody started spewing his bullshit, that might very well change. He was like a fucking bulldog when he wanted something. But if anyone got cozy with her, then it was going to be me. She's not a pass-around. I won't hand her around like a trophy. That's only going to lead to more arguments among you perverts. I won't have fights because someone had 10 minutes more with the whore. As long as it's only Mag getting his bonus after all the shit Vitiello has put him through, everything will be good. Cody looked as if he'd swallowed a bitter pill, but didn't dare bug Earl more. His face made it clear the topic was settled for him, and he wanted his fucking piece to shoot cans. I sent Cody a smirk and nodded my thanks to Earl before I stalked away to tell Snow White the good news. My heart was beating like a jungle drum. I was fucking ecstatic. But at the same time, I knew this could mess things up. I already had trouble getting my mind out of the gutter. Sleeping in the same room with Snow White definitely wouldn't help. Cody's warning had hit home. For one, I didn't know much about Marcella. She might very well stab me in the eye while I slept. I'd have to get rid of every potential weapon in my room, which would take a while. Good news. You're moving today, I told her. She scrambled to her feet, eyes growing wide with hope. You're helping me, she whispered, her gaze flitting to the clubhouse as if this was a secret. In moments like this, her protected upbringing showed. Everything had always gone to plan in her life. Her daddy had made sure of it. That someone might not fall to his knees before her mightiness and follow her command was impossible to grasp. I hope you're not thinking I'm taking you back to Daddy or letting you go. Not all of my blood has left my brain yet. She frowned, becoming vigilant. Where are you taking me? I unlocked the cage and entered, growing annoyed by her reaction, especially when she backed up a step. Did she think I'd grab her and throw her over my shoulder? I'd risked my fucking head for her, and she acted as if I was some kind of perv. Up to my room. That's where you're going to spend the rest of your stay here, until your daddy decides to hand himself over for you. Her mouth went slack. Have you lost your mind? I'm not going to share a bedroom with you. If you stay in my room, I can protect you from Cody. Out here, you're at his mercy, especially at night. I won't stay up all night and watch you through my window. Sorry, Princess. Not going to happen. You want me to think you're some kind of knight in shining armor? She hissed. Those blue eyes shone with distrust, and she had every reason not to trust me. I don't care what you think, Marcella, but if I tell you to stay by my side for your own fucking protection, you should really do it. Her eyes narrowed farther. I don't believe you're doing this out of the goodness of your heart. You can either stay here and wait for Cody to get his eager hands on you, or you can come with me to my room. For you to get your eager hands on me. I let out a sarcastic laugh. Don't overestimate yourself. Then I tilted my head. And if I recall our last conversations correctly, you made a move on me, and not the other way around. The look she gave me made it clear she knew very well of the effect she had on me. And fuck, she was right. I shrugged and turned on my heel to leave the cage. I wouldn't beg her to sleep in my room. If she wanted to stay with the dogs, that was her decision. They'd be the least of her problems anyway. Cody was already salivating at the idea of getting his tiny cock into her pussy. Of course, her refusal only meant I would spend all day and night watching the kennels from my window to make sure nobody touched Snow White. Wait, she shouted when I was about to close the cage. I masked my relief and cocked an eyebrow at her. I don't have all day for you to make up your mind. Maybe everyone's catered to your every whim so far, but I won't. I could tell how she fought with herself to keep a comeback in. I'll go with you, she said grudgingly. Then come on, Hurry. She tiptoed out of the cage, but Satan jumped against the bars eagerly, making her jump. She turned to the dog. I'll make sure my father frees you once he destroys this place. I scoffed. Your father will make a rug from her fur. You don't know anything about my father. Shaking my head in annoyance, I motioned for her to go ahead. She finally picked up some speed as I led her to my room. The club brothers gathered in the common area, hollered and whistled as they saw us. I sent them a grin, which increased the look of wariness on Marcella's face. The moment we entered my room, both she and I became tense, only for very different reasons. As the vice president of the Tartarus Motorcycle Club, getting pussy had never been an issue. Sexy women eager to please walked in and out of our clubhouse every day. But spending the night in a room with Marcella was a fucking temptation unlike any I'd ever encountered. I'd taken her into my room to protect her, but now that she was here, I wondered if this would seriously mess things up for me. I wanted her, had wanted her from the very first second I'd seen her, if I was being honest with myself. I need a shower, she said, tearing me from my thoughts. She scanned my room. She was used to better, of course. I'd lived in every imaginable hut, and I didn't give a fuck if she thought this was beneath her. She was lucky that she was out of the kennel. Be my guest. There's a shower behind that door. Of course, nothing as fancy as a marble bath with rain shower. She pursed her lips, her eyes settling on me. Maybe you think I'm spoiled? I think. Maybe I'm spoiled, but I don't think you have any right to judge me. I don't go around kidnapping people. No, you only profit from your father's crimes, and kidnapping people is the smallest of his sins. Whenever I attacked her father, her walls came up as she went into protective mode. Could nothing make her doubt him? My father would never kidnap a woman or someone's child. He's got honor, unlike you and your idiotic biker club. You think too highly of your father. If you knew everything he's done, I'm sure you'd change your mind. Nothing you can say would ever change my mind, Maddox. So don't waste your breath on convincing me. There wasn't a flicker of doubt in her expression, and it infuriated me. I wanted to destroy her image of her father. I wanted her hatred for him to match my own. I wanted her on my side. That would truly break Luca Vitiello.
Marcella. I desperately needed a shower, but I could hardly wear my dirty clothes a day longer. They stank of wet dog and sweat and were stained with whatever had clung to the dog hut. You should get ready for bed. I have an early day tomorrow, and can't afford to discuss bullshit with you all night, Maddox said. He kept a few steps between us, for which I was glad. I wasn't sure about his motives. I need a change of clothes. Mine are ruined. He motioned at the heap of wrinkly clothes on the armchair in the corner. Pick a shirt and boxers for sleep. I won't go shopping for you. After another glance at the queen-sized bed, I went over to the armchair. In the 2 years of our relationship, Giovanni had never spent the night. It was ironic that the first man I'd spend the night with in a room was the very man who'd kidnapped me and wanted my father dead. A biker. A man who definitely didn't share any of our values. I had flirted with him, but sleeping in his room had never been part of the plan. I looked around his room curiously. There wasn't much to it. A bed, a chair, and a desk. The latter two only served as objects to throw clothes on. I carefully picked up a piece of clothing, acutely aware of Maddox's eyes following my every move. From the messy pile, it was hard to tell if the clothes were dirty or clean. Maddox let out a low laugh as he perched on the windowsill and blew smoke outside. Everything's clean, but as you can see, I don't have a wardrobe, so the chair has to do. Ironing and folding too complicated for you? I asked, after I picked up a simple black t-shirt and black boxers. It felt strange, touching Maddox's underwear. The idea of wearing them felt even stranger. My relationship with Giovanni had always been too formal for me to get the chance to run around in his clothes. Not to mention, he would never have allowed me anywhere near his underwear. Be my guest if you want to stay in your dirty clothes. I grabbed the t-shirt and his boxers and disappeared into the bathroom. The room was clean but small. Maddox was right. I'd never been in a bathroom as simple as this. Even my friends came from money and had bigger and more luxurious bathrooms than most people. I washed my underwear in the sink with soap, but my pants and blouse were ruined. After a quick shower, I dressed in Maddox's clothes. His shirt reached my thighs, and his boxers hung low on my hips, almost slipping off. It felt strange, being this vulnerable around a man like him. When I left the bathroom, Maddox was gone. I walked toward the window, unsure what to do. Lying down in Maddox's bed felt like a bad idea. I was dead tired, but my suspicion kept me wide awake. After a while, the door opened, and Maddox came in with a plate stacked with sandwiches. He paused briefly, his eyes tracing from my bare feet over my naked legs all the way up to my face. He didn't give away anything. Usually men always went slack-jawed, but usually I dressed up. I have some sandwiches for you. You made them? He shook his head with an amused expression as if the mere suggestion was absurd. I had Sherry make them. She's a decent cook. The girl you got cozy with a few days ago? He nodded as if it was no big deal. Didn't she mind that she had to make dinner for another woman who'd spend the night in your room? We aren't dating, only fucking. She's a pass-around. She doesn't care. I'm not the only guy she's got an eye on. If someone else asks her to be his old lady, she'd dump me in the dust in the blink of an eye. All these girls want is a cut that declares them a biker's property. My lips curled. A pass-around, really? How sexist can you be? Oh, don't act so high and mighty. In your circles, women are used as bargain. I mean, who still uses arranged marriages? They worked for centuries, I said haughtily. And I'm not promised. Anymore. Weren't you and that sappy guy supposed to marry in 2 years? We didn't have a date yet, but for your information, I chose him, not my parents. You chose someone your father allowed near you, so you would choose him. I'd never seen it that way. But it was true that only certain boys had been allowed near me once I hit puberty. All of them well-behaved and respectful, not to mention terrified of my father. You know nothing of our life, but it's certainly better than this lawless hillbilly life you lead. I'm free to do as I please. You are bound by your old-fashioned rules. Even if he had a point, I couldn't just let it drop. I motioned at the hellbound tattoo on his upper arm, the sign of his club. You can't just leave the club either. That's not freedom. I live for that club. I'd never leave it. It's my fucking life. And my family's my life, so I'm not less free than you. I don't think you really understand what freedom means. I'd often longed for freedom, but not away from my family and the world I grew up in. Maddox held out the plate again, then set it down on the nightstand. You can eat in bed if you want, I don't mind. What about crumbs? I asked, more to gain time and get rid of my sudden nervousness. Those sheets have seen worse, Maddox said with a chuckle, making his way over to the armchair. My lips curled. I think I'll sleep on the floor. Maddox gave me a pissed-off look. I changed them this morning, so don't get your panties in a bunch. But if you prefer the floor, be my guest. I don't give a fuck. He removed his cut and draped it over the backrest. It was the first time I saw him without it since a kidnapping. The way he looked at it, The piece of leather seemed to be important to him. He slanted me a warning look. "Don't touch my cut while I take a shower." "Don't worry." He turned in the doorway to the bathroom. "And don't try anything, or I'll dump your perky ass in the kennel again." He closed the door. "Asshole," I muttered. But I was almost thankful. If he really did this to protect me, then it was a nice gesture. However, I couldn't believe it was only because of that. I'd inherited my father's distrustful nature, and it was rearing its head now. When water began running, I headed for the door and pushed the handle down, but it was locked. Male voices and boisterous laughter sounded downstairs. So the locked door was probably for the best anyway. Glancing at the stack of sandwiches and hearing my stomach's angry rumble, I finally took one with cheese and ham. I usually didn't eat carbs or dairy. One made you fat and the other gave you pimples, but I couldn't really bring myself to care. I stuffed 1/3 of the sandwich into my mouth and bit off, chewing eagerly. After living in a stinking cage for days and being at the mercy of those bikers, most of my previous worries seemed awfully irrelevant. Briefly, my mind touched on the video, wondering who had seen it, but I shoved the thought aside. It wasn't useful at the moment. The past was the past. I needed to figure out a way to improve my future. Sooner than I expected, Maddox came out of the bathroom and I almost had a heart attack. He wore nothing but boxers, revealing a muscular upper body covered in tattoos. Now the pull-up bar hanging from the ceiling by the window made sense. That body required work. I had to force my eyes away from him. His body screamed bad boy. I'd grown up around bad men, but Maddox carried his very own forbidden bad boy aura. Maddox looked at me as if I were an intruder in his space, as if I'd asked to be here, as if any of this had been my choice. He walked over to the small table and grabbed the cigarette package that lay there. "Did you touch my cut?" I rolled my eyes. "It's a piece of leather." He raised his eyebrows. "No, I didn't touch it." He nodded, obviously satisfied. He picked up the packet of cigarettes from the windowsill. "You're smoking in your bedroom?" He put the cigarette into his mouth, lit it, and took a deep drag before he finally deemed me with a reply. "Got a problem with that?" I shrugged. "It's unhygienic and disgusting, not to mention dangerous, considering how many people fall asleep with a burning cigarette and set themselves aflame. It's your health, but I'd prefer if you chose something that kills you quicker than nicotine." Maddox's expression twisted with anger, and he stalked toward me. I forced myself to stay put and not back away from his fury. "I'm the only thing that stands between you and a bunch of horny backers who want to get a taste of Mafia pussy." Why does this enrage him so much? He'd been particularly tense since we arrived in his bedroom. I stiffened. "Why do you even care? Why don't you let them have a go at me if you hate my family so much?" "I hate your father. You only annoy the fuck out of me because you don't even realize how privileged you are." Due to his outburst, he'd come very close to me, so the scent of his brisk, minty shower gel flooded my nose. His hair was still wet and messily hung down his forehead. My eyes were drawn to the tattoos all over his upper body and arms, images of hellhounds, knives, skulls, and bikes. "Stop playing the victim here," I said eventually. Maddox glared at me, but something in his eyes made me feel hot. "I was a victim a long time ago. I'm not now." My eyes flickered from the piercing in his tongue to the bar in his nipple. "I have more," he said, and took another drag. "Where?" I asked. His gaze moved down to his boxers. "2 more." My mouth fell open, trying to imagine where exactly he had them. My cheeks became hot. "You're toying with me." I narrowed my eyes. "You just want to make me nervous." "Why would 2 piercings in my dick make you nervous?" he asked. but his voice had a new, deeper timbre. I shrugged. They don't. He smirked, seeing right through me. Everything about Maddox made me nervous. Go to bed, princess. He always succeeded in making the word sound like the worst insult imaginable. Not wanting to appear scared, I sat on the very edge of the bed, my toes on the floor. The bed linen smelled fresh and not like smoke or sweat. Maybe he normally only smoked with the window open and just didn't to annoy me. Maddox gave me a half-amused, half-annoyed look. The sheets are clean, like I said. Don't worry. I'm not worried about that. He nodded, narrowing his eyes in thought. Then what are you worried about? Isn't it obvious? I'm not too thrilled about sleeping beside my kidnapper without protection. He pointed at his chest. I'm your protection, and you sure as fuck don't need protection from me. Your pussy is safe. I gritted my teeth, then finally laid back on the bed. It was much harder than I was used to from home, but felt like a soft cloud after the hut. Maddox finished his smoke, but even then he stayed in front of the window looking out. The letters Tartarus MC were written across his back and shoulders, and below it a skull was spitting fire, the same image as on his sternum. Why the skulls? He glanced down at his chest. My father had the same tattoo. I don't remember much about his appearance. Whenever I try to recall how he looked, I see the bloody pulp your father turned him into. That tattoo is all I got. I swallowed. I'm sorry for what my father did. He nodded, watching me intensely. Not your apology to hand out, and I doubt your old man will ever utter the words. He probably wouldn't. I looked away from his too personal stare and scanned his other tattoos. The words "no regrets" graced his left arm. You only regret the things you didn't do, I murmured. It was a quote I'd read on a motivational post on Instagram once, and it had resonated deeply with me. Maddox sent me a confused look until I pointed at his tattoo. He smiled wryly. What do you regret not doing? The list was long, but nothing I felt comfortable discussing with Maddox. I tore my eyes away from him and stared up at the ceiling. The fan was spinning around in slow, mesmerizing circles. Nothing. He laughed and my belly flipped. He appeared at the bedside, towering over me, still only dressed in his boxers. I don't believe you. I'm sure there are plenty of things you're dying to do, but can't because your old man is always watching your back. I didn't say anything. Maddox sank down on the other side of the bed, and I curled my hands into fists. Don't try to smother me while I sleep. If you try anything, I'll hand you over to Cody myself. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I felt too hot when Maddox stretched out beside me. His bed was entirely too small for two people who weren't dating. Our arms were practically touching. You could hardly count the half-inch between us. I folded my hands on my belly to bring more space between our arms. For someone who's been flirting with me in the kennels, you're awfully quiet now, he joked, his face tilted toward me. I turned my head in his direction. Despite our closeness, I wasn't half as scared as I should have been. If I wanted my plan to work, I should have been flirting with him now. But this was definitely out of my comfort zone. I thought you wanted to sleep. I do, he said. But his eyes said something else. I swallowed when he finally looked away and extinguished the lights. I listened to his breathing, clinging to consciousness, hoping he'd fall asleep before me. But I just knew he was wide awake. I wondered what kept him from sleep. It couldn't be worry for his life. Maybe he was imagining all the things he could do to me. My pulse sped up. Problem was, it wasn't only from anxiety. Chapter 10. Marcella. When I woke the next morning, I jerked up in bed looking around. Maddox perched on the windowsill. His cheek dimpled upon meeting my eyes. "You survived. See?" I cleared my throat and brushed down my hair, feeling vulnerable knowing Maddox had seen me sleep. It was a very personal thing, and one I'd never shared with anyone outside my family. The sun had only just risen, but Maddox looked as if he'd been awake for a while. "Why are you up?" Maddox shrugged. "You took up too much space in the bed." I tilted my head in consideration. It almost appeared as if Maddox felt uncomfortable with me in the bed. At least I wasn't the only one who wasn't at ease. I got up and stretched. Maddox followed the movement. Maybe he was scared of his own desire. I needed to use this. As I strode over to him under his unwavering attention, my courage slipped away. Like he had said, he wasn't like Giovanni. Maddox wouldn't hold back from fear of my father. He'd probably send him a detailed recount if we ever had sex. A hot wave passed through my body at the thought. I wrapped my arms around my chest as I stopped beside him, and the cold morning air hit me. My nipples hardened, and I was acutely aware that Maddox could see it through the thin fabric of the t-shirt. "I'll be gone on runs most of the day, but I'll leave enough food and water, and keep the door locked." I nodded, following his gaze out over the horizon, and marveling at how strange the situation was. In a blink, my life had been turned upside down, and I had a feeling this was only the beginning. I checked out Maddox's profile. The sharp angles, then lingered on the scar that looked like a dimple. "How did you get that scar?" Maddox touched the spot and smiled wryly. "When I was 9, I tried to set Earl's dogs free on a fight night. A few of them managed to run off. He hit me with one of the spiked collars he uses on the dogs." "That's horrible. But why did it heal so badly? The wound couldn't have been that deep." "He said if I wanted to pick the dog's side, I'd be treated like one, and their wounds always have to heal without treatment. He locked me in the cage for a couple of days, too, so I know how it feels." My mouth fell open. "No wonder you're so messed up." He laughed a deep, full belly laugh. "That's one reason, yes, but your old man still wins the prize of messing me up." I leaned against the wall, frowning. "But Earl was supposed to take care of you after your father died, not scar you mentally and physically." He sighed and shook his head. "I don't know why I even told you." "Because you don't have anyone else you trust enough to share it with." I spent all day sitting on the windowsill. At first, I'd been surprised that Maddox didn't lock the window. But I soon figured out why escaping through the window, apart from the risk of jumping down from the second floor, wasn't an option. I spotted guards patrolling a wire fence, and one of them had a Rottweiler on a leash. He'd probably send the beast after me if I tried to run. Remembering Satan's sharp teeth, I shuddered to think what they'd do to my flesh. Satan and I had made at least temporary peace, but I wasn't blind to the danger the dogs posed. I searched the horizon for signs that Dad was on his way. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for exactly. He'd certainly try to keep his attack secret for as long as possible to surprise the bikers. I knew he was searching for me, but being unable to contact him or anyone else from the family felt as if a part of me was ripped away. Even when I'd been away from home, I'd always had my phone with me to contact them whenever I pleased. Now I felt more alone than I ever had in my life. Maddox came home after nightfall, looking disheveled and pissed. "What happened?" I asked, sitting up in bed. "Your father." He didn't elaborate, only disappeared in the bathroom. I couldn't help but smile. Maddox came out 10 minutes later and got into bed without another word, but he didn't turn down the lights. "I told you my father would stop at nothing to save me," I said, not able to hold in my giddiness. Maddox scoffed. How did he brainwash you into being his biggest fan despite all his faults? Whatever drug he gave you must be worth millions. He's my father. Of course I believe in him. And the drug you're looking for is love. Oh, I cringed inwardly at how sappy that sounded, but it was true. Dad didn't only spoil me with presents and money. He spoiled me with love and affection as well. I'm going to throw up. Maddox twisted around facing me fully. Come on, be honest for a moment. You must realize what kind of man your father is. Don't tell me you don't care. I know what kind of man he is. Everyone in my family is involved with the Mafia. And your family members are outlaws, so don't tell me there's much of a difference. You justify your actions with club loyalty and your cut. And the members of my family justify it with their oath and the loyalty to the tattoo on their chest. Maddox shook his head. You defend the familia even if they look down at you. I'll be president of the club one day, but you'll always be the wife of a mobster. Your word won't ever matter in the Mafia. Still, you defend the cause. You don't seem like a woman who likes to sit back and do nothing. Who says I'm going to do nothing? You can't rule over the familia like your father. My brother will be Capo. Aren't you pissed that your brother will become the boss even though you are older? On occasion, I'd imagined what I'd do if I became Capo, but I'd never really considered it a valid option. Are women allowed in your club? Of course. Didn't you see them? I rolled my eyes. Not for fun or pass-arounds. I mean as members. No, it's against the rules. So if you had an older sister, she couldn't get involved with the club? He frowned. Okay, but the club and the mob don't allow women. But you seem like a girl who's used to getting what she wants. It must be hard to be in second place, and not even that. Your word will never mean anything in the familia. If you marry some pompous Italian mobster, he'll rise in rank of the familia, and you can raise his kids and give him blowies if he returns home from a hard day at work. Blowies? I repeated, with a disgusted twist of my lips while heat traveled up my throat in a very embarrassing way. Maddox used his tongue to tent his cheek in a very obvious way. That's disgusting. A blowy or my interpretation of it? Both, I muttered. Don't tell me you never gave that poor asshole a blowy in 2 years of relationship. No wonder he always looked so pinched. I would too if I didn't have a nice long blowy in years. Stop saying that word, I muttered. I never wanted to give Giovanni oral, and he would have never dared dream of asking me. He'd never even allowed me near his fly in our relationship. This discussion is over. Do I make you feel uncomfortable? Maddox asked, obviously enjoying himself. He made me uncomfortable for various reasons, none of which I'd discuss with him, especially not while sharing a bed. Flirt with him. That had been the plan, but following through was more difficult. Maddox watched me and my palms became sweaty. My body had never reacted to someone's presence like that. I made others nervous, not the other way around. Why would anyone pierce his genitals? I blurted, wanting to break through the silence. Maddox's answering smile only made me feel hotter. To receive more lust, and even more importantly, to give more lust. My mind went into overdrive. Maddox and I stared into each other's eyes. Then he shook his head with a chuckle and rolled over on his back. Go to sleep before we both do something we might regret. I doubt you'd regret me, I said. Maddox closed his eyes with a sardonic smile. I wouldn't. His confirmation stunned me. My eyes traced his chest, which wasn't covered by the sheets. And you? Would you regret me? He asked eventually. Definitely, I said. I didn't even want to consider the social media shitstorm I'd be submitted to if word got out that I'd slept with a biker, even if it was to save me. In our circles, women were condemned in the blink of an eye. And my family? Dad would lose it. Maddox nodded, his eyes still closed. Yeah, you definitely regret me.
Maddox. Marcella had spent the last 3 nights in my bed, and every night had been more torturous than the last. I felt her presence everywhere. When I lay awake beside her at night, and I hardly slept anymore, I was driven almost insane by her scent, and by the images of her body replaying before my closed eyes. I'd half hoped, half dreaded Marcella would make a move at me, even if only to save herself, but so far she'd held back. Despite her killer body, she wasn't used to making advances on men. I wasn't sure if it was due to her conservative upbringing or because she was used to men throwing themselves at her feet. I had half a mind to do the same. Some women dressed in expensive dresses and put on tons of makeup to look presentable. But Marcella in my clothes and no makeup was an apparition that put them all to shame. "What are you thinking?" she asked out of the blue. "Isn't that a question you ask your fiancé when he spends the night?" She shrugged. "Giovanni never spent the night." Douchey name for a douchebag. Then my brain registered the words. "Why?" "We hold on to our old values," Snow White said matter-of-factly. "And I live with my parents." I couldn't stop staring at her blue eyes, glowing against the dark kohl of her hair. "Let me guess. Your fiancé pissed his pants because of your old man." She smirked. "Most people do." "Not me." "No," she agreed in a soft voice. "Not you, Maddox." Fuck. I wish she'd stop saying my name in that gentle lilt. Yet, I'd never ask her, because the moment the last syllable died on her lips, I longed to hear it again. She was like a drug I couldn't resist, and I hadn't even tried it yet. She'd be like crack without a doubt. One taste and you'd be addicted, and ultimately she'd ruin you. "What's your favorite childhood memory of your father?" I hadn't expected that question. No one had ever asked me something like that. I racked my brain, trying to come up with an answer. Most of my memories weren't happy. My old man hadn't been the best father, but he had been a father. Images of my father fighting with my mom, or sitting on the couch with a beer, or not present at all, flashed through my mind. "He died before we could make many good memories," I said. But deep down I knew that happy memories would have been few and far between even if Vitiello hadn't killed him. But having a bad father was better than not having one at all. "But you miss him?" "Most of all, I missed what could have been. I missed that we never got the chance to have a good relationship. I missed that my old man never got the chance to be a good dad." "Of course," I said, but the words sounded hollow. Marcella tilted her head so her hair fanned out like pitch on the pillow. "What about your mom?" "She became my uncle's old lady a few weeks after my old man got killed." That should answer her question. My mom never really missed my dad. She might have missed the position as the old lady of a prez if my uncle hadn't immediately made her his. I motioned at her. "Your turn." I still couldn't get over the fact that Marcella Vitiello was lying in bed beside me, in my black t-shirt and my boxers, and talking to me as if it was the most normal thing in the world. "You want me to tell you my favorite childhood memory? Are you sure you want to hear any stories about my dad?" I sure as fuck didn't want to imagine Luca Vitiello as a good dad. I wished Marcella's memories of him were as bleak as mine of my dad. But I wasn't a pussy. I could take the truth. "Go ahead." Marcella's gaze became distant, Then a soft smile curled her lips, one I'd never seen on her usually so controlled and cautious face before. When I was 7, I had a phase when I was convinced monsters were in my walk-in closet and under my bed. I could hardly sleep. So, Dad made sure to check every possible hiding place in my room every evening. And even when he came home late in the night after a difficult workday, he still snuck in my room and made sure I was safe. Once he'd checked the room, I knew the monsters were gone, and I always fell asleep within minutes. But seconds before I drifted off, Dad would always kiss my forehead. I couldn't imagine Luca Vitiello as Marcella described him, as the loving, caring father. He had been the monster that still haunted 7-year-old me. When I thought about him, I always saw the axe and knife-wielding madman who slaughtered the people who were like my family. He was the man who'd been our enemy even before I had been born. This wasn't a new feud, but it was one to last generations. Marcella regarded me. You don't believe me? I believe that's how you see him, but it doesn't change my feelings toward him. Nothing can erase my hatred. Nothing ever will. Never say never. You'll rather learn to despise your old man before I'll forgive him. That's a fact, Snow White. I cringed. This was the second time I called her by that name outside of my head. Her eyebrows puckered, and she regarded me as if she was trying to see right into my brain. Snow White? I shrugged and rolled over on my back, staring up at the ceiling. She kept watching me expectantly. Come on, don't be surprised. I can't believe no one's ever called you Snow White before. Black hair, pearlescent skin, red lips. One dark brow twitched up, and I realized I was only digging myself a deeper grave with every word out of my stupid mouth. The ghost of a smile passed her lips, and it was only